out. I'm glad that worked out. It took me a second, but it worked. It worked. Hello for everybody who is new. Hello for everybody who did see me earlier this morning at an absurd time, which was, just 8 in the morning, over on Atheist Pastors for the Sick Pack. That was a lot of fun. I definitely recommend going and checking them out. They're almost at that 1,000 subscriber mark, so if you want to give them a hand, that'd be fantastic. I will also be over there next Friday, I believe, at also 8 a.m., and they may actually single-handedly save me from myself of fixing my horrendous sleep schedule. Anyway, let's get started with Dumb Fekk Friday. I really hope this does not become a regular every Friday kind of stream, because that would really be awful, and I really hope I don't see that level of stupid every week, but so far, that has been the case, and I already have a plan for next Friday, which I will announce now, so that way our good buddy Unirock doesn't have to wait through the whole thing to hear the offer that I have for him, since he seems to be on his annual I want Chesh to talk to me phase that he does. He did this around this time last year. He's doing it around this time this year. I don't know what his spiel is, but I keep sitting around waiting for him to give me a link to his streams that he keeps demanding that I show up on while giving me no notice. Well, here's my 1 week notice. Next Friday at this time, I will go live and I will await his response. My ultimate suggestion is that he doesn't have to accept, but my suggestion is that we play basically 2020, or 20 questions. It doesn't mean it's limited to 20, and we're not trying to necessarily figure anything out, but ask a yes or no question. The person has to respond with yes or no, and you go back and forth. So he asks a yes or no question, I answer with yes or no, and then I get to ask a question that is a yes or no question, and he gets to answer. Now, the person has to respond with a yes or a no. Now, they will be able to elaborate afterwards, or they could say that this is a complex question fallacy, but if you're going to call complex question fallacy, you're going to have to be able to demonstrate how it is a complex question fallacy. Now, if you do, then the person does have an opportunity to rephrase their question. If the question is not a yes or no question, then the person can say, that's not a yes or no question, and veto the question, allowing the person then, again, to rephrase it as a yes or no question. If it does become something that is not a yes or no, but you're willing to answer it anyway, you can go ahead and do that. I don't see any reason why to stop doing something like that. But I will go live on Friday at 4, awaiting his response. He can stream on his channel, I can stream on my channel, it's no problem. He can just add me on Discord and there will be no issues and we can just get in a call. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. I'm even kind enough that if he so desires, he may have the first question. So, that's where we're at with that. That's sort of the updates. I will also be live on Monday as usual. Nope. We're not live this Monday with Judgment Call because Steve is traveling. He's going to go visit the FBI. So that's happening. So, look forward to that. Intreepuland says you should also include a point on leading questions. I'm not really concerned about leading questions, only because it is a back and forth, meaning that I can answer and then elaborate, and then I get to ask the next question. So leading questions will not be as effective in this, but we'll see. We'll see. I'll finagle some of this as we come up on the week. But I like your line of thinking. So, as for Dumb Fekk Friday. This interesting. Oh, Helios for 5 says, why resist when you know it's going to be an every week thing? Though through bribes, bullying, or necessity, there will always be more than enough for a show. I am aware. Well, that's one of the questions that could be an option, AT2. I think I may open the floor to chat as long as they ask a yes or no question. So the question could be, do you have an FBI case number? Yes or no. And he can elaborate or not. Now, that's not stopping anybody from lying, but we'll see. And, I'm resisting it because I refuse to do research to find this dumb Fekk stuff. I refuse to go out of my way to look for this nonsense, although it does seem to find its way to me very easily. So that's what I mean. So let's take a look. This person, I'm going to show you where this conversation started, because what's wrong with my account was what this person had to say. Let's see where it started. Jimmy Snow had just blocked somebody. Steve said, "I told you so," because of course he did. Jimmy Snow, Mr. Atheist, blocks anyone who calls him out on his manipulative lies that he continually uses for his attempt at historical revisionism. This person said, "Your hypocrisy and lack of self-awareness never cease to amaze me. You and Chesh literally have a block list with over 300 names." Steve responded, "There is just so much wrong with this comment, so many things wrong. Can you please tell me someone I have blocked who was ever honestly trying to engage in civil dialogue, not harass me or my friends, and who was not trolling? I'll wait." Sure, me. Of course I hop in, because I got tagged. "Everything you just said is well-known lies about us / the situation, and we're supposed to believe that you are an honest interlocutor who got blocked?" Steve also responded to this by saying, "You don't seem to be blocked by either of us, so what are you talking about? You have screenshots, I assume, before you would make such a foolish statement." And then I looked at their account. And so here's some of the people on their followers list. That's their other account, by the way. Oh, actually, no. Is that this guy? No, yes, this is their other account. They have two, at least. Known racists. Good. That they're following. That are following them. And then, Yep. And then following. Oh, following known racists. Okay. Big brain. And then I went ahead and just looked at, this was the top of their account when I went and looked. Oh, McRae Scam Cult, The Flappening. Emily D. Baker and the guys talk scams and fundraisers. McRae admits it's never been about getting the Non Sequitur show back in the community. Link to the stream. Yes, you definitely got blocked for being an honest interlocutor. It definitely wasn't that you're engaging with and encouraging racism, sexism, sexual harassment, misogyny, fraud, etc., libel. You know. LOL defeated with evidence, but blah, blah, blah. Why you blocked me, I'm such an honest person. Looks at account for 2 seconds. What's wrong with my account? So, of course, I retweeted this. What's wrong with my account? Does somebody want to tell him? Does anybody want to make this guy aware of what exactly is going on? I feel like explaining to this person the behavior and bullshit they are supporting is problematic, and why. Do I really need to explain to this person why racism is problematic and maybe don't support racism? Do I really need to explain to somebody why supporting fraud? Maybe not. Maybe not a good idea. What about slander and libel? Yeah, that doesn't even include that. If you look at, let's pop over and see what they've been up to recently. March 2021. Oh. Yeah, still one of his top ones. Zone video. Da 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 da. Okay. They only have 127 tweets, and it's all this kind of just, I'm making fun of people because I am a shithead, not because I'm actually calling out poor behavior. That's what I see that happens to Shani a lot, which I think is kind of sad. Not that I don't think Shani probably deserves a lot of the flack that she gets, but there's a line when whatever you're doing goes beyond calling out and having a bit of a chuckle versus you're just harassing this woman and what you're doing is not even it's not fun anymore. You're just being malicious. Yeah. Oh, look at that. Who are they speaking with? No. Oh. So, one of the fun things is take the pawn going for the king. Okay. There's a, when you jump to sexism like this, you're creepy, just in general, when you're trying to slander or come at somebody or try and accuse them of whatever and say, oh, well, I don't know about any of this. What people do I follow that hate Steve? What are you talking about? They have 127 tweets, and looks like over 50% of them are to me and to Steve or about us or against us or whatever. Shani is a well-known personality on YouTube on like the drunken peasants sphere of internet nonsense. There was at one point they were like, I don't know anybody who hates any of these things, and yet their first thing is this video here. It's like, oh yeah, okay. Cult. It's just an interesting quick, like, Steve, yeah, I think you should apologize. Yeah, for being right. Okay. Yep. Defining words, yada yada yada. This whole account is this. And then it jumps. Gee, I don't know. What is wrong with my account? If you want people to be engaged with you and want to actually take your criticism or what you have to say seriously, because you have legitimate criticism to give, your best bet is to approach it from a critical, objective standpoint, not from a slanderous bias standpoint. Don't sit there retweeting, oh, it's buzzword cults, buzzword rumors, buzzword long since debunked stuff about us. Why don't you want to talk to me? I'm an honest interlocutor. What's wrong with my account? Definitely not obsessed. Definitely not on the level of cray cray. Oh, apparently this guy was still going again. Creepy. Anyway, that was a level of stupid that I was not prepared to deal with that day. Like, take 2 seconds to look at this guy's account. Oh no, definitely, please tell me someone I have blocked who was ever honestly trying to engage in civil dialogue. Well, considering this account is from only March of 2021, and Steve had unblocked everybody, and that this is this is the first time I've seen this account. There's a decent chance that if this person was blocked, it was on another account. So if it was blocked, they didn't even say what account. Like, really, you're encouraging and supporting racism, stalking, and harassment. Why would you block me? Maybe because you're crazy and nobody wants to deal with this. Oh, and yeah, this person doesn't know what guilt by association is. So, yeah, there was a level of stupid here when if you're gonna be a troll or you're gonna try and, like, pull off what you did here, you need to do a better job at hiding it. It took me, how long, what time did I post this? 8:54 in the morning, and my reply was at 8:56. actually just 2 minutes to look up screenshot and then post it. You're dumb? You belong on Dumb Fekk Friday, because this is just a really, really, really stupid thing to say. What's wrong with my account? I only just support and follow everybody who harasses you. Okay. Absurd. Okay, next one, because this only got worse from there. I'm not fronting, so if you wanted to go and find the rest of the conversation that went on, please feel free to go and explore, but it was nonsense. Next one. So this is Autumn. They go by @NotesForAutumn. And I got kind of annoyed during watching her engage with Scott Clifton. And at some point, she was double speaking. So she had said, but there are many of us who are neutral and prefer the label atheist for activism purposes, not for philosophical specificity. And I said, stop abusing philosophy and atheists for your bullshit political and personal gain. It's like you have an agenda and you're trying to manipulate the numbers. The reason I took umbrage with this and the way I did is that up here, at some point, if I can find it, she said atheists are a minority. And I want to say it was maybe on this Lloyd Evan guy's tweet. This guy went sideways out of left field. Like, way, way sideways. But we're not talking about him right now. Where is she? Oh. Oh, what the hell does this have to do with anything? Whatever. Let me guess. Oh god. Moving on. We didn't see that. I don't know what you're talking about. Okay, it's not here. At some point during this exchange, or along this lines of this exchange, she claimed that atheists were a minority group. And so with this other tweet here, she's saying that she's taking advantage of a minority group. And I was like, if you're gonna, you can't have it both. Don't take your cake and eat it too. So let's just see what Lloyd is saying and then see what Scott is saying. So, to be clear, atheism does simply mean a lack of belief in God rather than asserting God doesn't exist, and I won't have anyone say otherwise, no matter what letters are after their name. The theism/atheism debate matters, and stripping the atheist position of all nuance doesn't help. Alright, dumb Fekk. Being specific is what adds nuance to things, not the other way around. If you're too vague, you're removing the nuance. You've got this backwards. Secondly, don't complain that other people are telling you that there are other ways to use a word when you demand that this is the word I'm using and this is the only way to use it and anybody else is problematic, because that's what you're implying here. It can mean a couple of different things, and some ways are more effective than others depending on the conversation. If you want to talk about utility and semantics and have that conversation about semantics, you can, but before you can have that conversation, you have to acknowledge that there is more than one way to use a word. Period. End of sentence. Scott Clifton then goes on to explain. I'm going to go through this a little bit because there's sort of an escalation that I want to address here. Again, not about these arguments in particular, but the tactic and the way this sort of goes. Golden Unicorn for 2 says they are trying to gaslight you, Chesh. Yes, they're trying to lie. I think we'd all save ourselves a lot of agony if we stopped conflating beliefs and assertions. Correct. If you don't have the burden of proof to prove every proposition you find yourself believing. Relax. Be honest about what does and doesn't seem true to you. It's not some binding commitment. He is correct. And if I may, if a theist tells you that you have the burden of proof to prove no God exists, just because you believe the proposition, no God exists, the response is to tell them they don't understand how the burden of proof works, not to pretend you simply lack belief on the matter. Correct. Autumn responds with, hey, I'm wondering if it's too late to get a response from you, but my issue is not about having the burden of proof. You've quote tweeted me before on why the lack of belief definition is important to me, so I wanted to remind you that for some of us, the issue is having our label and beliefs defined for us. And being forced to hold the position that we don't sincerely hold very much reminds me of religious dogma, being forced into extreme assertions that are unfalsifiable just because some philosophers whine about it somewhere doesn't really, and she goes on. But he already said, stop conflating beliefs and assertions, and here immediately she's conflating beliefs and assertions. You can see the switch that goes on here. Now, whether or not this is rhetorical and on purpose, but it means that is what's happening. So that doesn't really float my boat, question mark. Just so we could get her whole context in here. Nobody's trying to force you into an assertion. That's exactly the conflation I was trying to say is problematic. Just because you believe X doesn't mean you're asserting X. You have every right to the private belief that no gods exist without ever having the burden to prove it. But I don't personally believe that. I'm agnostic on the prime mover, even if I'm Gnostic atheist about the Christian God. Wouldn't it be dishonest to say I believe something I don't? Then it would be dishonest to call yourself an atheist in the philosophical sense. Yes, that would be dishonest. Atheism, whether we're talking about the philosophical definition or the lacktheist one, is about any gods, not a specific god. If you're sincerely neutral about whether some version of God exists, then you call yourself an agnostic and let go of atheist. Exactly. It's fine. But there are many of us who are neutral and prefer the label atheist for activism purposes. So you're utilizing it with an agenda, not for philosophy specifically. So, this is a thing. It doesn't make sense to me to use atheism as a political stance, because you can hold any political stance while still being any religion or non-religion. So you can be a Christian who is pro-choice. You can be a Hindu who's pro-gay. You can be an atheist who's transphobic. The belief in a God is completely non-related to your political stance. Now, a lot of religions do try to enforce political change or a political standard using their religion. The conversation about whether or not religion is correct or a religious group is behaving in an acceptable manner is not the same as having the conversation about whether God exists or not. So, making that a part of the political conversation is just adding additional layers that you don't need. You don't need to convince somebody that their God doesn't exist to have somebody change their mind or their political affiliation about, especially if you make it about a specific topic, like minimum wage. What the fuck does God have to do with minimum wage? What does whether or not God exists have to do with whether or not people should be legally allowed to have interns that they don't pay? What does God have to do with... What does God need with a starship? Like, none of this is relevant. You can have these conversations and remove the God element and progress further in the political sphere by not trying to alienate and umbrella people, because there would be Christians or Mormons who would probably, agree with you. I know plenty, maybe it's because I'm in Canada, but I know plenty of Christians who are totally pro-taxing churches. They're like, yeah, no, this is dumb. They should be taxed. I'm a part of this church. Yes, tax them. But because there's such a divisiveness, and in my opinion, is because there is a chunk of the United States that is so religion heavy, it's become the response to this amount of oppression is this counterforce. But the counterforce is focusing on the wrong area. If you focus on the positions about politics instead of the position about God, you're going to get a lot further. You're going to get more bang for your buck. Now, so this to me is just stupid. This is just dumb. Why would you put yourself in a box that you don't feel comfortable in, that you don't feel like you belong in, that you don't believe? Why are you lying to people for activism? Because that's what she said. She said that she's an agnostic, but she uses the term atheism for alternative purposes. Why? Because it's not, again, you can have the discussion about whether or not there's a degree of utility, there's a degree of marketing. But I could, from the conversations that I've already had, it's not terribly hard to find a better way and market differently. Market around secular humanism. Market just around humanism. Doesn't even have to be secular. If you market around humanism instead, you take the God question out of it entirely. You take this entire conversation and the philosophy of God out of it, and you take the conversation about beliefs out of it, except for the acknowledgement that you believe humanity should be better as a whole and be good to each other. And that is a lot easier of a conversation to have when you're talking about political stances and activism for people's rights. So Helios says, her saying that they purposefully mislabel themselves for a political reason is like the transphobes that started to ironically claim they were another six to fight trans laws. And Dapper says, but you're forgetting that theists are meanheads and we gotta be those guys as possible. You gotta be anti-stans. To Christians, I am an atheist because I reject their God claim. If I told them I was agnostic, they would have the same problems. How? That is a very good question. How would they have the same problem? Because there's a difference between being anti-theist or anti-religious. I know plenty of people who are Christians who are anti-religion. Like, they are not a fan of the way religion is formed, the way the Catholic Church handles themselves, the way some churches behave here, there. Like Westboro Baptist Church is a really good example. Most churches are like, nah, those guys, bruh. You don't need to reject God to reject poor behavior. In the same way, you don't have to accept God to accept or portray good behavior. It goes both ways. They would assume I'm hiding the ball in some way since I do reject their claim. They often used to think I had never heard the gospel or was just unaware in some way. So other people misunderstood what agnostic meant, so you're like, well, I'll just misrepresent my position so I don't have to have that conversation and have a different one? Where you actually do play hide the ball, because that's what... So you got accused of doing it, and so you decided to actually do it? Because that's what this sounds like to me. It's so bizarre. There's something to be said for, again, what is utilitable in your day-to-day conversation versus what is like maybe a higher level debate or discussion. If you're talking to your aunt or your cousin and they happen to be religious, then you may have to explain your position and the nuance to your position. But you notice here that having agnostic and atheism has added nuance just in her explanation. In her explanation, she's talking about, hey, here's the nuance of this and this. So if I say this, they're going to misunderstand and think this, or they're going to think this and that. Well, that means there's more nuance there to be understood. So you're using a bullshit blanket term so you don't have to engage in the conversation. If you don't want to engage in the conversation, you don't have to. You don't have to misrepresent yourself and feel uncomfortable in who you are to avoid a conversation. You can just say, nah, I don't really want to discuss it. You can even say what your position is and just say, I just don't really feel like discussing it. That's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Scott responds, no, they wouldn't. If they do, then they don't understand what agnosticism is. An agnostic isn't committed to being neutral on Zeus or any other specific god. Again, this is trivially easy to clarify, as opposed to the never-ending semantic battle when you battle you're stuck fighting currently. Because, again, she's arguing this lack theist definition, which it doesn't just have semantic. Like, the semantics of this argument are piddly, in my opinion. As much as I would love to have the conversation about the semantics and the utility, there are bigger problems, like semantic collapse or special pleading. So, I disagree. Even less people understand agnosticism than theism on the whole. I'm gonna need a source for that, because I'm not trying to deny her lived experience, but she's making a statement not about her experience. She's making a statement in general, so I'm going to need a source. I'm going to need a citation on even less people understand agnosticism than atheism on a whole. Because if you take the number of people that misunderstand agnosticism, and you take the number of people that misunderstand atheism, including a lot of atheists who seem to think that the definition is lack theism, I feel like you're probably not gonna, those numbers aren't gonna be on your side, I don't think. So source, please. The only time there's a semantic battle is when there are people who won't actually listen to when I'm clearly defining my terms and insist I define them differently. You mean like this guy? This is why this kind of stuff belongs on Dumb Fekk Friday. When your own, like, little blurb completely undermines your argument, you're choosing to fight this battle. If you want examples of an atheist who isn't fighting this battle, look at me. I used to take your stance, then realized I have no reason to fight for an entirely separate definition from the philosophical one, so I adopted it. Wow. You mostly engage with other philosophers, right? Tell me if I'm wrong, so that makes total sense. I think the newer usage has caught on quite a bit, to the point where my usage is common enough to be in the dictionary. Yay! Argument via dictionary. Ooh. I think the newer blah blah blah. I can't force myself to believe there are no gods, so I want to make sure I get everything she says, can't follow suit, but thanks for taking the time to reply. Of course you can follow suit. Just call yourself an agnostic, at least whenever you know you're talking to philosophically minded people, and you'll never have this problem again. Or when you're inside of the realm of philosophy, like if philosophy is the topic you're talking about. So if you're talking about religion, theology, belief systems, ontology, epistemology, you are having a conversation within the field of philosophy. So the same way you might be sitting around with your friends talking about, oh, I have a theory about this lore in this book of like, oh, Game of Thrones, actually, if it's this, 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 and that. You have a theory, but it's not the same kind as a biological, like the theory of evolution. And so you use that term differently, and it's super duper interchangeable. No big deal, no worries. Why would you not be able to do the same thing in philosophy? If you don't want to have the discussion and explain it to people, then don't. Don't make other people do the work for you because you're lazy, because that's what this reads like. I do say what I'm agnostic on when talking with philosophically minded people. The problem is coming from the brigade of people who insist I can't use the atheist label at all. Example of somebody doing that, because this is the only example that I see. Agnostic just means you're neutral on the question of whether some God exists. If you believe the Christian God doesn't exist, but that other gods must exist, you're a standard agnostic. Saying, I'm an agnostic on such and such God is unnecessary. So if you'll notice here, she's flipped again. She's gone from saying, hey, it's really problematic if I call myself agnostic because people will think that I'm not sure about the Christian God, for example. but she wants to take the lack of belief because she doesn't lack a belief in gods. Yo, lady, pick a lane. You're embarrassing yourself. The label is important to me, so I find it necessary. Then educate yourself on it. If you think if it's that important to you, then have a proper understanding and learn when to use it, when not to use it, when it applies, when it doesn't apply. Learn to communicate. Because that's the thing you're complaining about. You're complaining about whether or not people are going to understand what you're saying. If you have a stronger and better sense of the label that you think is important, learn about it. Educate yourself. Read a book. That doesn't make sense to me. The label is agnostic. No philosopher would be confused about what you mean by that, so why is it necessary to you to add a totally redundant clause at the end of it? Who is that for exactly? I don't normally engage with philosophers. Maybe some philosophically minded people on Discord. I don't really know what philosophically minded people is. I'm not sure what that means. I'm gonna go ahead and assume it's people who have... Sorry, I just looked at chat. You guys are wieners. I assume what they mean is people who sort of discuss epistemology and belief systems more so than they discuss, like, the historicity of Jesus or the flood. Excuse me, sorry. My throat's been giving a little bit lately. I made a tea and I left it over there. Hold on, I'm gonna grab that. Hey, Pop. A lovely follower decided to send me something from my Amazon wish list, and it's green tea, and now I have some green tea, and it's fantastic. Okay. I don't know, like, I'm curious to know about whether, like, Scott Clifton is considered a philosophically minded person. But I'm not sure. I think that's what she means, but I don't have a very good gauge on what she's referring to, because, like, a lot of theology is a part of philosophy, so is every theologist just philosophically minded, or are they something different? So maybe what I'm asking is, what's the difference between somebody who is philosophically minded, who isn't philosophically minded, and somebody who is a philosopher? If that makes sense. Don't fall into the human mug, Chesh. I'll do my best. I'm agnostic on general theism. You just said a philosopher wouldn't mind what label I use as long as I define my terms and how I feel. Like, this is contradicting that, ? I didn't say they wouldn't mind. I said they would likely find your definition annoying, since being philosophers, they know all the problems it creates. But neither would they demand that you adopt their definition, since being philosophers, that what they care about is the concept. Right, so if you're going to purposefully, because at this point she's acknowledged that this is not the right term for me, but I'm using it anyway for political reasons, and activism purposes, whatever, and I'm telling other people that this is what I am, and you're mischaracterizing it. So you're spreading misinformation, whether purposefully or accidentally. And you're going to go out purposefully knowing that this is not the right term to describe yourself. Describe yourself that way anyway, then get annoyed when people say that you're wrong. There's a set of philosophically minded people, and a subset of that are philosophers. Non-philosophically minded people are the not set. Thanks, Feline. God damn it. Hi, Egghead. Okay, so it's annoying for them. Fine. It's annoying to me when people try to tell me I can't use a label that I and others who define it the same way have been using for a long time already. Oh, so labeling somebody by something as long as it's been a word for a long time is fine because it's been around for a long time. How does this apply to racism? Hey, I've been using... Is this woman become racist grandma at the dinner table? Like, you know what she's saying is wrong and inappropriate, but she's so old and she's been doing it for so long, it's just, like, not even worth trying to break her of the habit? Is that what just happened here? This is what I mean by Dumb Fekk Friday. Replace the label she's referring to a racial slur, or a transphobic slur, or just a slur. It's fallacious reasoning, essentially. And others who define it the same way have been using it for a long time already. No interest in engaging with philosophers that are easily annoyed, and by my honest description of my position, no less. They're not annoyed by your honest description of your position. They're annoyed by you purposefully mislabeling things when speaking about philosophy. The same way a lot of atheists and a lot of people who've studied biology and a lot of deists, anybody who's not a young earth creationist, gets annoyed when people say evolution is just a theory. They get annoyed because you're purposefully misusing the term. It's the same reason why people use... it's the same reason why people get annoyed when Christians pull a bait and switch on the word faith and say, well, you have faith in the scientific method. Well, no, I'm not using faith that way. That's not it's the same as my faith in God. No. These are different kinds of faith. They can both be okay, but don't bait and switch them and pretend they're the same thing when they're not. It's the same way as when somebody says that confuses agnosticism to be about, when you're talking about belief, to be about knowledge, when it's not. I'm mostly here for the average person who is deconstructing Christianity or similar religions. So what do you do when you run into a Christian who is philosophically minded? You are purposefully handicapping yourself. Because there's nothing stopping a Christian from saying you're special pleading. Or there's nothing to say that definition collapses. There's a semantic collapse. Or from the Christian going into a discussion with you and saying, well, I don't believe that gods don't exist. Do you accept that? And when you say, why not? They just say, oh, I don't believe you. There's a lot of problems that come along with the definitions, and your lack of acknowledgement or addressing to try and fix the issues that come along with it by just being obstinate and using really, really bad argumentation as to why you're looking to use it anyway, which basically just seems to come down to you're lazy and manipulative. Lazy because I don't want to explain things, lazy because I know I'm wrong and I'm not going to fix it, lazy because I don't want to educate myself on this thing that is so very important to me, but also manipulative because I'm using this for personal and political gain. It's really fucked up when you lay it out like that, isn't it? Golden Unicorn says, I and my friends use nincompoop to label ourselves as intelligent. I don't care how the word is actually described in English or how it originated. But will you get offended if somebody else calls you a nincompoop? I don't know. Maybe. You can have faith in a used car salesman, but I don't recommend it. Fair enough. So there's a whole nother thing here where Steve jumps in, because of course Steve jumps in. It's Scott. Of course Steve jumps in. Let's actually look to see where he jumped in, because this turns into a whole nother line of bullshit. You mostly engage with other philosophers, right? Responding to Scott. Tell me if I'm wrong, so that makes total sense. I think the newer usage has caught on quite a bit, to the point where my usage is common enough to be in the dictionary. Yeah, and literally and figuratively mean the same thing in some dictionaries. That's useless. I can't force myself to believe there are no gods. There actually was an active attempt by atheists to write dictionaries to have the word atheist to be described more in the negative sense, even though it is wrought with philosophical issues. So yes, this is Steve referring to that there was actually an active push. That's the political part she's talking about. So she's justifying her stance due to political movements which have already manipulated things to allow her to use that definition in the first place. Weird, right? Nincompoop is our word. You have no right to use it. Rude. I have no interest in talking to you. No interest is required for me to make a comment about your tweets, but thank you for noting to me that you're not interested in honest dialogue. God damn it, Steve. You sassy bitch. And I just said at least they're honest about their agenda. At one point, Autumn and Steve ended up talking a little bit further, and I'll see if I can find it. But I became an internet atheist. Oh. Okay. Should we look at their YouTube channel? I don't know if we should. Maybe we will. Give me a minute. Let me just scroll here real quick and see if I can find the conversation that was happening with Steve. Because this was yesterday or the day before. Oh, this was nonsense, but another day. Another time. Here we go. I think I found it. In my personal opinion, I don't think there is any newer usage of atheism because lacktheism definition is illogical. Well, realistically, lacktheism is almost its own term at this point, and so you're better off to just call yourself a lacktheist than you are to call yourself an atheist, or a lack atheist, just because it's confusing. So you're almost better off using two different ones. But I found the conversation, so when we get to the top. Okay, there's a colloquial and a technical sense of the term theory, but biological evolution should be understood in the technical sense. Similarly, there is a colloquial and a technical sense in the term atheism, but philosophical atheism should be understood in the technical sense. Correct. Yes, and there shouldn't be dogma that everyone should adhere to philosophical atheism outside the context of philosophy. You mean like this? Dogma? Like this? We're back to this. Does simply mean lack of belief. God does, rather than asserting God doesn't exist, and I won't have anyone say otherwise. You thirsty, Puck? For example, Ben is a philosophy guy and he is speaking in a philosophical context. You didn't have to reply to him. He wasn't talking to you, but you did, and you're talking philosophy right now. So it would be considerate to use the philosophical terminology if you know it. I'm replying on Twitter and I am not being inconsiderate, just making a separate point. You're fighting over semantic real estate for no reason. All Ben suggested was that if you are talking about philosophy with philosophy people, you should use philosophical terminology. If you're discussing evolutionary biology and you use the word theory, for the sake of conversation and for the sake of being productive and for the sake of being able to be understood, using the word theory in the same way as your interlocutors is relevant, that is important. It's why young earth creationists get laughed away when they say, well, evolution is just a theory. No, we agree that it's just a theory because we have an understanding of what that term means in that context. Same thing with, gravity's just a theory if you're a flat earthers. I am telling you, this nonsense is the flat earth version of philosophy. Atheism is just a lack of belief in God. Oh, gravity is just a theory. Oh, thanks, Puck. Oh, evolution's just a theory. Why is that so? And she's the one coming over to people who are talking about philosophy and explaining the philosophy and telling them not to do things. Nobody came to her to tell her she can't or can. She's imposing that. She's projecting that onto other people. I bring it back. I'm gonna keep coming right back to this asshole. So, for example, I read that already. Steve pops in. I don't know her actual position, as she clearly isn't forthcoming with her actual beliefs, which she said she wasn't. But she seems to want to label herself atheist, but holds to being agnostic towards the proposition, which isn't necessarily a label, but vis a disposition. I'm an atheist. So this is another part of this conversation. What a nightmare shit show this is. This is the different part of this same conversation. Here we go. Nobody's asking you to call nobody's asking you to call yourself an atheist if you don't have the belief that no gods exist. In a philosophical context, you can and should call yourself an agnostic to avoid unnecessary headaches. Scott is not arguing for dogma. Scott is not arguing for compliance or obedience. Scott is arguing for pragmatism. It's pragmatics to do. This is how language works. You need to be able to communicate with the people you're talking to. If you aren't willing to do that, then you're the asshole. Except that there are people that insist on that, so please stop saying no one. Give us citation. I need, Dapper, I'm going to need you to send me the video of your citation needed so I can start playing it, because citation needed. Where you came over to this guy. This guy's out here all on his own, making these definite claims that he cannot back up, and saying that other people are wrong to do so. And given how abrasive his language is, he seems to be implying some things. And if you've seen any other of the conversation he has, well, you know, it ain't so pleasant. When entering your Discord server or wherever this frustration takes place, you could just explain to people being introduced to philosophy, or perhaps new, bitter, or defensive atheists that, I'm going to see what she says the whole way, the term you prefer for one who does not make the positive claim there are no gods is agnostic. Well, no, that would be wrong. Oh, who does not make the positive claim there are no gods is agnostic. A theist does not make this is why this doesn't work. The theist does not make the positive claim there are no gods. They make the positive claim that there is a god. This still won't get rid of the dishonest rhetoric much of the time, so I guess that still needs to be addressed separately and on an individual level. Okay. You aren't hearing me. Given that you are not an atheist, given the philosophical terminology, I highly doubt anyone philosophically savvy is telling you to call yourself the wrong term. They would ask that you call yourself an agnostic, since that's what you are. I'm an atheist. He didn't say you weren't. He said that you said you were agnostic, which we saw you say. You described yourself as an agnostic over here, wherever the hell that was. Over here. Where is that? Discord later, whatever. Oh, this is just in her regular stuff. Hold on. Oh, this is that one again. Whatever. Wherever it was, she said she was an agnostic on the proposition, and then later says here, I'm an atheist. This is why it's confusing. Not only is Scott talking about, given this, given that, given what you've described, you said that it was fine, and now you're saying it's not fine. Dear God. Not according to the philosophical definition, and right now you're talking to philosophy people. So you're insisting on calling yourself the incorrect term, which does nothing but cause unnecessary confusion for no reason. I just don't get it. Steve says, I'm fine with her labeling herself anything she wants. She can call herself a square circle if she likes, but if she is someone who has no belief either way, it is factually accurate to say she is agnostic towards P being the proposition. Why she wants such confusion, however, is a bigger question. Yes, why are you trying to purposefully confuse people? She says she's understood. She says if she's talking to philosophical people and philosophically based people, that she would use these terms because it's pragmatic and it would make sense and she wouldn't have a problem with that. Then she comes over to a thread that she was not tagged in to complain about people who are philosophically minded people that they were using philosophical terms. Here we go. I'm an agnostic on general theism. Thank you, Intrigue Feline. Autumn, I think it would be fair for you to note that Steve, arguably one of the most aggressive personalities when it comes to this particular issue, is fine with you using whatever label you want. And he always has been. There's so many times where people are running around saying Steve is telling me what to describe myself as, and he's saying, no, you're telling me your position and I'm telling you what the accurate label is in philosophy. You can call yourself whatever the fuck you can call yourself a paper bag for all I care, it does not matter. But in this sense, in this context, this is what you're labeled as. If you don't like it, write a paper and get the label changed. Never asked his permission. Wasn't about asking for permission, you dishonest bitch. He's giving an example of the thing you're complaining about. You say people are doing this to you. Steve is one of the most outspoken people about this discussion, and he's saying that, yeah, no, it's fine for you to call whatever you want. And then when somebody brings it up that you can note this, you're a bitch about it. I never asked for his permission. Nobody said you did. I'm just over you telling me something that happens all the time doesn't happen, aggressively so. You haven't sourced anybody saying that. Where has anybody done this? The only thing Scott has said, stop pretending you're a victim here. You came wandering in this situation. There's a bunch of people making a sand castle, and you're like, that's not a sand castle, that's a sand igloo. And they're like, okay, you can call it an igloo, but we're having fun with our sandcastle. And then you kicked their sandcastle over and said, fuck you, it's an igloo. And they're like, why? And they're like, well, I made a sandcastle before, and I made an igloo before, and everybody tells me I have to call it a sandcastle, so I'm kicking over your sandcastle even though none of you said this. And Scott's saying, oh, I'm sorry for you. Why? Who picked? I don't know anybody from our group of sandcastle builders that did this. Who's done this to you? Fuck you, don't make me call it a sandcastle. What are you doing? Aggressively so. No. This is some manipulative bullshit. Oh, you're telling me that something doesn't, you're gaslighting to me. You're telling me that this thing doesn't happen all the time and it happens always, and you're being aggressive about it. Scott's not being aggressive. Fact, for one. He's not. 2, one of the most aggressive people is telling you, it's cool, call yourself whatever you want. Well, good. That should be a point in your favor. You shouldn't be a snooty bitch about it. 3, you came here. You came to their sandbox, and now you're bitching at them for shit they didn't do. And you haven't provided a single example of anybody who is doing it to you. So who's doing this to you? Skeptical people don't tend to believe things by fiat, so who is doing this to you and where? Scott, being a better person than I am, patiently. It's not about permission, Autumn. It's about representing the people you disagree with charitably, so it would be uncharitable for you going forward to keep claiming that Steve is trying to force his definition on you. He just told you that that is not his intention. And then Steve posts his work, because of course he does, gives some examples, yada yada yada. And if I'm not mistaken, she pops in here also. I never claimed anything about Steve. She kind of heavily implied it over here. As soon as Steve popped up, she was like, I'm not talking to you. So there's like, there's an implication that, yeah, talking about Steve. But also an indication of one of the main people that say, or that gets accused of particularly if you look at her account here, and the people that she's got following, like the people that she's watching and following, there's a good number of them that are the people who make these accusations of Steve being prescriptivist, right? So, I think Scott's jump here is a reasonable one to be like, what? I never claimed anything about Steve. It's kind of been implied, but okay. Steve and I have kept agreeing with the charitable dialogue bit. You just keep giving the least charitable interpretations of my stances on this and making assumptions that aren't true. What assumption has Scott made? He just said that you should note that Steve, who is one of the most outspoken people on this, is saying that this is fine. And then it was being charitable. She did not claim that Steve is trying to force his definition, not in this thread. But there is a common thing that goes on. This is simply just a misunderstanding at best. Or at worst, this is a misunderstanding. But given her reaction as soon as Steve said something, to be like, oh, I'm not talking to you. Oh, okay. But it seems to be that that's not a hard dot to connect. I never claimed anything about Steve, blah, blah, blah. Nobody's giving a least charitable interpretation of your stances. You've described your stances, and you're taking issue with the overarching... You're having an issue with the philosophical community, whatever that is, that I don't think exists. Do you mean to tell me that you've never had Steve in mind when complaining about people dictating what definitions others can use? Well, I mean, surely she wasn't talking about this guy. I'm gonna move this over here and make my life easier. I have no idea who he is. This is where we get into serious dumbfuck land. I have no idea who he is. I was told once by someone I trust not to engage with him, and that's the only reason I said I wouldn't talk with him. Okay. If you're going to make up a bullshit story, make sure there isn't a plot hole through it you could drive a truck through. You just had somebody randomly send you a message, hey, look out for that Steve guy. And you just said, okay. And then as soon as you saw him, were like, I'm not talking to you. Really? Anybody with 2 brain cells and a little bit of skepticism is supposed to buy this? I mean, it seems dismissive enough on its face that most people would just sort of brush past it, in my opinion, I think. But I have no idea who he is. That's bullshit in your next sentence. I was told by someone I don't trust not to engage with him. Okay, so you did know that your friend didn't want you to engage with him, so that's something. That's the only reason I said I wouldn't talk with him. So your friend told you not to talk with somebody, you said okay, and you didn't even ask, like, oh, why not? Especially if they came to you apropos of nothing. And you were just like, yeah, okay. And then as soon as you saw him pop up, you were so afraid of him that you were like, I'm not talking to you. My friend told me not to talk to you. I'm not talking to you. But all these people in philosophy, blah, 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 blah. It's like, what are you doing? What are you talking about? What a dumb thing to have said. Steve ends up retweeting this and saying, if she has no idea who I am, then why was someone telling her not to talk to me? There's some major inconsistencies in this comment. She comes in and says, because I asked in a DM about the previous thread you were in with me, and they said not to engage with you. I'm curious as to what previous thread, because Steve popped up and you almost instantly said, nah, bruh, I'm not talking to you. So I'm curious to know if there was another conversation that happened. And I'm actually going to show you guys how to find that out. So if I go over here and I'm going to go back to this one, I'm going to go into the search. And I'm just going to do just a regular search. It'll pull up the regular search stuff. If I click here, I can search advanced search, From advanced search, it'll pull this up. I can then see from these accounts to these accounts. And I can put in Steve. Did I spell his name wrong? I wasn't looking. A-E, right? A-E, that's right. A-E. Yeah, okay. Boom. This will show me all of the conversations they've had back and forth, adding each other. So let's see if we can find the oldest. So this is the one that they're talking about. Yada, yada, yada. The last one that they were in was from February 3rd. So they had a conversation in February. For most of my life, I've used the word atheism to mean without theism, or what has now been dubbed lacktheism. But I never would have claimed that I, Scott Clifton, merely lacked belief in God. Rather, I'd have said I'm more than just an atheist, since I believe no God exists. In recent years, I've begun using atheism as Oppie does, the belief that no gods exist, because it's less confusing and makes way for more useful definitions of agnosticism. It's more nuanced. But the battle over semantic real estate rages on, and until now I've never cared enough to ask. Are most of those fighting for the lacktheist definition denying that they personally have a belief that no God exists? Is the claim they are making actually an empirical one, namely, that they truly have no propositional attitude towards theism? Or are they, like I was, happy to acknowledge their belief no gods exist? They just think the word atheist should only give us information about what beliefs someone doesn't have, not what beliefs they do have. I'd love to hear from lacktheists on this. The only reason I define atheism as a lack belief is because I'm not trying to make the claim that there are no gods. And there you have it. I don't want to be on the same playing field as theists. I don't want to have to be making a claim, so I never have to actually demonstrate my belief or justify it. I spent the first couple of decades of my life believing and making untrue claims. I only use the atheist label to indicate that I don't hold a God belief. I'm also fine with the agnostic label and use it for the first few years post-Christianity. I will claim Christianity isn't true, though. Agnosticism is not the step between theism and atheist. It's its own. You still have to justify yourself being agnostic. This is still its own position that still holds its own burden of justification. You don't just go boop, boop, boop. Sometimes you go boop, boop. Sometimes you go boop, boop. Sometimes you go boop, boop. You can go all over the place. This is not a natural progression necessarily. It is a progression a lot of people do, but it doesn't have to be that way, and that does not mean that this is just like a holding place. It's not a baby cage. God damn. Why not? Making the claim God does not exist doesn't require some absurdly difficult burden of proof. Dr. Oppie has a very simple approach, appealing to theoretical virtues, comparing a naturalist theory versus a theistic theory, of which one is simpler. You'll notice she is responding to philosophically minded people. And she's just explained that she has a... she has an alternative motive in what she's doing and why she's doing it. Far be it from philosophers to be taken advantage of like that. I'm not pro-atheism, though, so I don't really care. I got into activism to advocate for critical thinking and not a specific belief/position. You've earned your place on this show. Congratulations. Let me just... I got into activism to advocate for critical thinking and not specific belief positions. And yet you're over here complaining to people who do philosophy that they shouldn't be educating people on philosophy. And then you're over here, months later, bitching about Steve because you don't know who he is, when he had a completely cordial conversation with you saying, that's cool, just saying that atheists who claim God does not exist don't have as high of an epistemic bar to reach as some think. It's not as big of a deal as people make it out to be. I don't know why Matt Dillahunty and the Atheist Experience are so scared of having burden of proof when they actually hold the very position that there are no gods. I don't think they are scared. I think it's just the format of the show. Most theists aren't challenged on their epistemology, and I think the show is meant to expose that. If that were true, then off the show they wouldn't say the same silly things off the show that they say on it. Yes, it wouldn't be sort of their mantra, if that were the case. And Steve and I have had that conversation before. If this was their goal and if it was just for the show, then it would make the most sense for them to say, hey, listen, we're calling in, we're approaching it this way, this is the way we're doing it, but if you want resources into philosophy, go over there and have that philosophy conversation over there. And that would be fine, but they don't do that. They tell people in philosophy that they're wrong about philosophy when they aren't, which is problematic and spreading misinformation. I don't know. I think they're doing fine. The hosts all have varying positions, and I don't think any of them need me to speak for them. You just said, I'm not pro-atheism though, so I don't really care. I got into activism and advocate for critical thinking and not a specific belief position. Critical thinking. Then think. Use your big brain. I believe in you. Big brain time. Does she know what epistemology means? Good question. Of course, I don't watch the show any longer. I haven't for quite some time, as it has become a bit of a caricature of what it used to be. Okay, so they had a perfectly cordial epistemology talk, and that with lactheism or non-philosophical talk, that doesn't add up. Yeah, there's a couple things that she's going, most theists aren't challenged on their epistemology, and I think the show is meant to expose that. You mean that the show that's talking about philosophy that's not using philosophical terms? That show? The show that's talking about epistemology and challenging theists on their epistemology have their definitions. They're not using the definitions of the field that they're using, so they're just as guilty as all the young earth creationists and the flat earthers saying that anything is just a theory. Atheism is just a lack of belief, so they don't have to exercise their epistemology or their critical thinking skills in argumentation, which is philosophy. You just said that you wanted to do this for advocating for critical thinking. Why? Why did you say this? Why do you say this and then behave like this? I asked in a DM about the previous thread Steve was in with me, and they said not to engage with you. Why would you asked about him for what reason? Because he disagreed with you? It was a good catch, Freeline. She has a perfectly cordial conversation, no problem. The next time he jumps into a thread, she's like, I'm not talking to you, and then is like, I don't know anything about you. You had a conversation. You're familiar with his position. And then you behaved like this. And then I don't know who he is. If you wanted, why would you? This is so ass backwards. Like, I don't understand. This is, to me, this is dishonest. Also, I had a conversation with Steve. I then asked about Steve in a previous thread and also said, I don't know who Steve is. Yeah, I don't know. I have no idea who he is. You lied. Sorry, you lied. You got busted. And you didn't even lie well. At least if you're gonna lie, do us all a favor and don't treat everyone like they're fucking stupid and they can't just look. As I just showed you that you can just look to see what conversation they had back in February and see that it's a perfectly cordial conversation where he's still telling you that you can use whatever definitions you want, consistently telling you that. I'm waiting with bated breath for her to say, Steve says I can't use these words. Meanwhile, I guess she's perfectly fine with this because this guy's part of her club. I wonder if she's in this thread. Hey, it's Jimmy Snow! Oof. I want to see who's liking Jimmy Snow's comments. Who's supporting this asshole? Oh! Who's surprised? Not this guy. Big oof. Big oof. Alright, let's wrap this up here. Oh, I broke my Twitter. There we go. Why would you be asked in a DM about me? He meant why would you be asking about me in a DM, but whatever. And why would you listen to anyone if you have no reasons why to not engage with me? Are you saying you just followed someone on blind faith? She seems to be, but I'm not sure that I think that that's actually what happened. I trust their opinion that you're not worth engaging with. We're not talking about God claims here. It was sufficient evidence for that type of decision. You also don't seem worth engaging with based on our previous interaction. This one that I just read? Seems like they have unintentionally developed double standards. Could very well be the case. Worth is a value judgment. I am not familiar with our previous interaction other than you saying you were not interested in speaking with me, so I didn't. So you didn't trust the opinions of others who do feel I am worth engaging it with, such as theoretical bullshit, which is Scott Clifton. So Scott's like, yeah, Steve, these people are fine. So she's making a value judgment of somebody's opinion as opposed to others, which is what Steve is getting at, which is philosophy. That's philosophy. This is still the realm of philosophy. Also, Steve's an agnostic, so why would he bringing you proof of God or having a conversation like that? But whatever. It just seems very cult-like that you have handlers who tell you who and who not to talk to. Shrugs. Especially when I'm rather known for having some insight and valuable arguments in this area of discourse. I am working even currently on having a paper published on the subject. First and only time they've ever advised me that way, so ellipses seemed good enough for me. Even Scott said you're super abrasive previously, I believe. No, he didn't. He just said that Steve was one of the most outspoken people about this. He said aggressive. Merely because I am blunt in my style, and I kinda know my shit on the topic. So the word aggressive has more than one meaning, go figure. He doesn't mean he's going to yell and berate you. It means that he is outspoken and forward on this matter. He comes up a lot. But again, she called Scott aggressive for questioning her reasoning and her as to why she would be doing what she's doing by saying, oh, these people are telling me how to use these words, but if I was talking to philosophically minded people, I wouldn't do that. And then immediately goes over to philosophically minded people and complains about the thing that she said she wouldn't be doing. Bullshit. So that tends to scare off some people. Shouldn't you make your own determinations? You can take advisement from others, but makes no sense to allow them to decide for you. I would agree with that. Sometimes Steve will tell me like, oh, hey, look out for this, and I'll be like, oh, okay, cool, and I'll just go look into it. If I want to know what somebody's like and whether or not they're worth engaging with, I go and look at them. I don't really need other people's opinion unless I ask for it and I say, hey, do you know about this person? And they'll go, oh yeah, this, and this. But they don't just tell me, oh, don't engage with that person. I go, if they say that, I say, oh, why not? And then I hear what they have to say, and then sometimes I'll be like, what, really? Where did this happen? And they'll send me a video or link about where they were, or they'll show me that, oh, look out for this thing, and I'll be like, oh, okay, no problem. But none of them like make any kind of... Nobody I know does anything like that, or at least nobody I spend any time with. Normally, I normally too, but this is Twitter, and I don't care that much. I don't need to engage if I don't want to. It's not that serious. No, you don't, but you've made some implications here, and over here, and this is happening, and this. Like, your behavior is not matching your words anymore. You don't need to one way or the other. So Steve's like, you don't have to engage with me, it's fine. Just others notice things. If you are unwilling to engage with me, who is one of the most honest agents around, it should not surprise you that people question your motives and supposed want to have honest engagement. Yes. Again, to me, you're just some guy on Twitter. That doesn't seem to be the case. So I don't think that says anything about my character. Your behavior does, though, and the way you've responded to him and his argumentation does say something about you, and your doublespeak of behaving one way while saying this, you're not going to do this thing, and then you immediately go and do this thing, does. And especially if this is the conversation you're referencing, what you've implied by saying, oh, based on a previous conversation I asked about you, makes it sound like he said or did something inappropriate in that conversation. I looked the conversation up. We read it. You guys tell me, one in the chat. Was Steve aggressive or abrasive or even rude in this interaction, in this first interaction they have in February? 2 in the chat if you don't think so. 1 in the chat if you think Steve is just a meanie poopy head. In this sense, in this particular case. Actually, tell you what. Let me rephrase. 1 in the chat if you think Steve was chill in this. 2 in the chat if you think Steve was an asshole. And 3 in the chat if you think, yeah, Steve was fine, but he's still a meanie poopy face. We'll go with 3. We'll do that. Oh. Steve is a meanie poopy face. Yep. I realized I skewed everything as soon as I said that. I am a fool. 1, 2, and 3. Yay! I don't think that says anything about my character. None of this convinces me to want to talk to you. All you and Scott do is make assumptions about me. Doesn't seem fruitful. Again, she's back to playing the victim. Well, nobody understands me. Well, everybody's just coming after me. This doesn't say anything about my character. Yes, it does. The way you behave says exactly things about your behavior. 3 under the new rule. We got 3s! Yeah, I figured you guys would want 3, so I figured I'd make that adjustment. You're a mean poopy head for changing the rules midway. That's fair. That's fair. Yeah, it wasn't a fair poll. Do you guys want to start the poll again? Alright, I will type a Trigglypuff in the chat. In a second. I will put a Trigglypuff. Alright. 1. If Steve was fine in that interaction in February. 2, if Steve was a dick to her. 3, if Steve was fine, but a meanie poopy head anyway. And 4, Steve was a dick and is a meanie poopy head. And so all votes will count after the Trigglypuff goes in. All you and Scott do is make assumptions about me. Doesn't seem fruitful. Scott made a single assumption based on your behavior towards Steve as soon as he showed up. I don't want to talk to you. He then assumed you knew who Steve was because you behaved as if you knew Steve was, because you did. You just lied about knowing who Steve was after the fact. So he made an assumption that makes complete sense based on your behavior and what you said. So when you clarified down the line that that's what you weren't referring to Steve, you never said who you were referring to, so we still don't know who is doing this to you. But no, Scott is just making assumptions. And then you go on over here. Yeah, no, Scott was 100% right in his assumption. He's absolutely correct. Doesn't seem fruitful. I mean, I'm getting a kick out of it. I got a whole stream out of it, so it was fruitful for me, I guess. No assumptions, only go out by going what you have said. I don't care if you talk to me or not. I really don't. It doesn't mean I can't point out issues in your argumentations to others. Cheers. Exactly. Cheers, buddy. I'm not your buddy, guy. I'm not your guy, friend. I'm not your friend, buddy. This is a whole other crazy person we're probably going to talk about, if their channel still exists, because it is all about, like, crazy conspiracy theories. We're probably going to do that while we're hanging around waiting for Unirock next Friday. But, spoilers for next time. But, yeah, there's no cheers buddy here. You were an asshole to him. You made claims about him and made some serious inferences, or not inferences, you implied And then you threw fucking Scott under the bus, who was being nothing but nice to you and trying to understand what the fuck you were trying to say. Nobody was making any assumptions. You were just not understood because you're saying one thing and behaving another way. Congratulations, you've earned your spot on Dumb Fekk Friday with the Flat Earthers of Philosophy. Good job. Way to go. Thanks for playing. We are at nearly the 1 hour, 25 minute mark. We're almost at 1:30. I will be wrapping it up here, but I will once more make my offer for next Friday. The offer is, I will be waiting at same bat time, same bat place, 4 p.m. Friday, next Friday coming up, Eastern time. I will be waiting for an email, or actually I'll be waiting for a Discord message, because I'm sick of waiting for for Unirock to email me when he never emails me to come on my stream. Okay, email me. Never emails me. So I will be live. I'm going to have another hurry up and wait stream, the exact same thing we did for negative exponents. I don't think we're going to go for 14 hours because I don't care. But I will be live at 4 p.m. Eastern, waiting for Unirock to show up for the conversation that he apparently wants to have with me. I don't know what he wants to talk about, but my proposal is that we essentially play 20 questions. Not limited to actually 20 questions. He will ask a yes or no question, and I will have to answer yes or no, and then I may elaborate. No complex question fallacies. If you decide to call complex question fallacies on somebody, you have to be able to explain how it's the fallacy. If you can't do that, void, you need to answer the question. We may or may not play with the rules a little bit to allow for a little bit of column A, like a yes and a no. So like in this way yes, but in this way no. We'll see what's going on. We'll take a look at some crazy YouTube videos while we're at it so we can have some fun that way. But I also may allow people in my Discord to come in while we wait, and then whenever he messages me on Discord, which will be pinned in the chat that night, and he sends me that friend request, then I will hop out and it will just be two of us in the call. He can stream on his channel, I can stream on my channel. Nobody has any particular power over the other one in that case or whatever. Not that that was something I was concerned about, to be honest, but it'll be a good time. It'll be super duper fun. So I will see you guys next Friday for that. On Monday, I don't think anybody's... I feel like nothing's happening this Monday. I don't think there's anything happening this Monday. So I'll be back. I get a day off. Yay! I will be back on probably Tuesday then with the Canadian version of Nick Fuentes. Yay! And we're going to take a look at that. So that's going to be some Canadian political nonsense, but it's going to be Canada MAGA, I guess, which is kind of weird. So that will be at 4 because I'm moving my streams from 2:30 to 4. So if you're usually around for our 2:30 stream, all of that is getting moved to 4, so that way we will be going after Answers and Reason. Go check out Answers and Reason, and go check out the calendar that is live. It's a Google Calendar. You can see when people are streaming what. I hope you guys enjoy. Thank you, members. Thank you for liking and sharing, or disliking and not sharing, whatever. If you want more art D&D stuff and more conversations like this that just kind of go on in the Discord, feel free to become a member or a Patreon. You will get that Discord link. Keep an eye on the community tab. There's always nonsense going on, and hopefully I will see you guys next Friday for a disappointment. Have fun, everybody. I'm going to go give Puck his boops, and I will catch you next time. Bye.